Welcome to Indie Summer, a series where I take a look at indie games that have caught my eye that I want to give some special attention to. Today's game is a tabletop role-playing game, a game you play with your imagination, a pen, and some paper, which, if you're familiar with me and this channel, should come as no surprise, but it's still what I would consider an indie game nonetheless. Today, we're talking about Pendragon, specifically the newest iteration of the classic game by Greg Stafford. This copy of the starter set was gifted to me by the publisher Chaosium at Gen Con when I nerded out over it a little bit at their booth, and although they're not paying me for this video, I still feel like I should mention that. Now, as a warning, Pendragon isn't for horny bards looking to smooth talk their way out of every encounter. It's for nerds, big nerds, like me, who want to roleplay as squires and knights of Arthurian legend, bound by honor to defend the realm. This isn't my first foray into the world of Pendragon. I first stumbled across this game when I saw this sexy boy sitting on the shelf at Half Price Books, and I was inexplicably drawn to it. Now, this is a copy of the 5th edition, and although I immediately fell in love with it and approached this new iteration with a little bit of skepticism, I have to say it's actually come a long way, especially in bringing this game into 2023 and doing away with some of the elements that sucked the fun out of the older versions. One of my favorite things about this new 6th edition starter set is that according to the website, you can actually use materials and adventures from the classic editions of the game with this new, more streamlined version. But even more than that, I really love this new approach to starter sets that I honestly think should be the blueprint moving forward. Apparently, Chaosium is aiming to do this with all of their starter sets, but you actually start your journey with Pendragon with a solo adventure. Instead of having to sit down and read all the rules alone and then explain them to your dickhead players who just show up. Just kidding, sort of. You actually get to go on your own solo adventure first. It's a choose-your-own-adventure style of narrative experience that not only introduces the basic mechanics of the game, but also sets up the lore of the world you're going to be playing in fairly seamlessly. This adventure was super fun, and if you have players that are daunted by reading the book or learning the rules, I mean, it's my favorite part of the game, but I'm not judging. This is a great way for them to get an easy primer. The starter adventure is super simple to grasp, and you basically dive in and get little explanations of things as you go along. The starter adventure is also neat because it gives you a cute little backstory if you want one. My adventure was wildly different from my friend who also played. He was this aspiring squire who did all these cool things and was willing to do anything to get ahead. And then you have my squire, who was this lazy dude who fumbled their way through the boar hunt and got high with an old hermit in a cave and somehow came out the other end as King Arthur's best friend. Either way, it's essentially a great little session zero that you can do on your own to establish your life before you became a great knight of legend, which is what this game is about. You are a knight who seeks to gain glory and fame, and the means you employ to gain those things is kind of up to you, really. This game has it all. Politics, intrigue, romance, massive battles where you risk life and limb for God and country. The starter set comes with everything you need to kickstart your campaign, and from there, you can honestly create the medieval sandbox of your dreams. There are also appendix rules for everything from tournaments to mass battles and even visiting foreign courts. So you have the tools to create your own story right out of the box. I think the reason that Pendragon fits my vibe so well as a player and a GM is that it actually addresses a lot of tiny pet peeves I have with players when we're playing D&D specifically. Like when you have a starting character that talks about how they're a rich, famous assassin, and I'm just like, you're level 3, Mary, and have 5 gold in your inventory. Chill. But in this case, the game's entire premise is that you are a knight. And in a world where the overwhelming majority of folk are commoners, this marks you as special, privileged, but also a little famous right from the outset of the campaign. So players can have that main character syndrome and actually have it make sense for the setting and the story. I really like how the materials in the box right away explain that Arthurian legend is rooted in King Arthur's desire to improve the generally bleak living conditions of the time. And the players will be rewarded for trying to make a miserable world better. They, of course, can choose to be wicked and abuse their stations, and they won't be punished for it, but they won't be encouraged by the game's mechanics either. The game actively rewards characters for seeking out glory and building a positive reputation for themselves. So if you've been DMing a lot of D&D sessions where you've grown weary of your players being murder hobos, despair not. This might be your chance to throw them into a game that will gently nudge them to become great heroes instead of killing the shopkeeper because he refused to give them a discount. I mentioned before that the world is a bleak one, and as laid out in both editions of the game that I flipped through, how bleak you want it to be is genuinely up to you as the game master. You can have a world that is realistically cruel to certain demographics of society, or you can hand wave what is annoying to you away. In a world where we have witchcraft and wizardry, it's not impossible that all of the NPCs are accepting of female knights. You can tailor the experience to what you want to play, which is true of most tabletop RPG games, but this one spells it out pretty clearly. One of my favorite things about Pendragon the Senior, that's this one, is actually something that's missing from the starter set, but will probably be in the full version. And that's that this game is built to be played over long stretches of time as you play not only your original character, but also their descendants. There's 3 really cool advantages to this approach. Firstly, it allows combat to be punishing in the game. Grievous wounds in Pendragon have grievous consequences in this game and can have permanent effects on your character, or at the very least, leave them in a weakened, unhealthy state for a considerable period of time. A lot of injuries can't be solved by taking a simple long rest. Barely surviving a duel with the scrap of health left will leave you in a precarious position, making the stakes high and the game suitably more dramatic. Secondly, it answers the question a lot of players have. How do I retire this character that I've been playing for X amount of years? In Pendragon, it's rare for a knight to make it to a ripe old age. They live a life that demands combat in return for basically feasting on the hard work of the peasants. In a game like this, it's about what kind of legacy you're building for your lineage, and your story becomes more about your house and its trials versus a story focused on just one character. This allows players to take bigger swings with characters and even swap out a knight that isn't fitting with the party or the story anymore. Maybe the bit has grown tired, and Sir Hennessy the Drunken Knight initially seemed like a good idea. I mean, I thought so, but maybe now you'd like to go in a different direction. Well, you can retire Sir Hennessy to enjoy his lands and holdings and instead choose to play his son or daughter. And you can do this without having to stretch yourself too thin, coming up with a reason for him to leave the party, and conversely, coming up with a reason for your new character to join, because all of the threads are already there. Lastly, having a game that focuses on lineage instead of a single character allows you to play in a lot of different eras. If you find one particularly interesting, sure, you can stay there for a while. But if you're itching for something new, you can kind of fast forward and skip ahead to a particularly fun part of medieval history. It's fun to shake things up without starting a brand new campaign, and with Pendragon, you don't have to. I definitely collect and read games faster than I can actually run them. But hopefully, I'll be able to get a table together and run this one soon. I have so many cool ideas for a homebrew campaign I want to run in this setting, including one with the last heir of a kingdom being held ransom in a foreign court in dire need of rescue. If you're interested in running a game of Pendragon yourself, or if you already have, let me know how it went. And if you want to see me run a game, head over to the Patreon, and if I collect enough coins, I'll see what we can slap together. Until next time, I'll see you next Indian summer.